I honestly really mean it when I say that whenever I hear about these sorts of things, one of my first thoughts is, I don't need to make a video at that. And then it just worms into my brain and stays there until I run my mouth. So, as you could probably guess from the thumbnail, that this was brought on by the most recent episode of Star Trek Discovery. This would be episode 4 of season 3, an episode entitled Forget Me Not. And I'll get into some of the specifics about this, but I also want you to realize I'm not trying to focus exclusively on this episode or this show. Much like always, I'm using this as an example to try and deal with the broader stuff. And also, let me be upfront, I'm going to be very negative. I'll try not to be nasty, but I can't guarantee that I won't get there. And the other caveat I have to give you is that I have not actually seen this episode. Now, there are certainly people out there who immediately go, well, that invalidates your opinion. Well, first off, in my defense, I haven't started watching Star Trek Discovery yet because I don't have CBS All Access. But more to the point, much like I do whenever something comes up in a piece of media that I either don't have the ability to watch or for some personal reason really do not want to, then I will do my research on it. I will do the legwork, and I do believe I've done it here. And while I may not be able to present full context in terms of the entire series of what it was that is going on, I can talk about the instance and still talk about my reaction to it, which again is not just about this specific instance. So the fact that I haven't seen it is not the point. The fact is this is an embodiment of something that I can't deal with anymore. So in this episode of Star Trek Discovery, we are introduced to the series, and I don't just mean this series, the entire franchise of Star Trek, the first canonically trans character. Now, there have been allegorically trans characters in the past, the Trill being the main example of that, but there has not, prior to this character, whose name is Gray, there has not been a canonically trans human character in Star Trek. So this was a big deal because whether certain members of the Star Trek fandom want to admit it or not, there is a significant queer audience for this show, for this franchise. And to finally get concrete representation, not just allegorical representation, not just metaphor, not just hinting at, but actually having it flat out explicit representation, that's a big deal. And Discovery has been breaking boundaries already. It had a canonically gay character right from the start. There's a non-binary character on now as well, played by a non-binary actor, and the trans character is played by a trans actor. So there's progress being made, and I don't want to shortchange all of that, but this was a milestone. And the character is immediately dead. And what I mean by that is the episode is more or less a kind of a flashback episode to the trauma of the non-binary character and their losing their love, who was Gray, and that was the trans character. I've talked about the bury your queers trope, although I believe I called it bury your gays. More specifically when I did that video, which you can check out there. But it does apply to all segments of the queer populace. This kind of gets done to all of us. And I also want you to know that I didn't just look up the events and then come up with my ideas about this. I've actually been talking with friends, other Trekkies, other trans women who are Trekkies who have been actively watching the show. In specific, I had conversations with Jessie Gender and with Riley Silverman. I will actually put a link in the description for the article that was written by Riley, because she actually spoke with Blue Del Barrio, who is the non-binary actor in the show. And Riley was able to talk to them specifically about this element. Because I've seen a lot of very mixed reactions to this. I haven't seen any wholly positive, not from an actual member of the trans community. And like, just reminder in case you're new here for some reason, I don't identify as a trans woman, but as a gender fluid person on a hormone regimen. I have absolutely transitioned out of being a cis male. So I do still consider myself to be trans, and I do identify a lot with trans characters. And as I said, I've reached a breaking point on this, and talking it through with Jesse and also going back and forth with Riley and sort of coming to the best understanding that I am going to about what happened, it doesn't alleviate things. Because it's not 100% clear cut. Now, let's be clear about something. Gray is dead, but also not really gone. So Gray's kind of part of the makeup of Adira, which is Blue Del Barrio's character. I can't get into all the specifics about it. It has to do with the way that Trill symbiotes and their hosts work. And it does appear to not just be like a memory, like a construct within Adira's mind. It does seem to have some agency and like have its own input and its own personality. So it is like Gray is still alive, kind of, but like Gray's dead. That is a dead trans person immediately upon introduction. So as I said, I've talked about the bury your queers trope in general before. This is the point where I'm going to just say it flat out. Writers, stop doing this. Please. How is this still happening? How? After frigging Voltron, which was a couple of years ago now, where a gay character was introduced and then immediately killed off, and everybody got really ticked off. And more recently, the uproar about Lovecraft Country, which, granted, they were probably already shooting this in the script store, but like, my point is, it wasn't a one-off. It's been reinforced repeatedly recently that introducing and immediately killing a queer character is a really bad move. So why do you keep doing it? And I'm going to pull a little bit from the interview that Riley had with Blue. Because the way that conversation goes, it reads to me as though Blue Del Barrio was not talked to about what was going to happen around their character and was just handed the script. Now, it does sound like they now are going to have more input on their character, and there appears to be some recognition that this was a mistake. And also there's been assurances that Gray is going to remain and isn't just going to be like a one-off or occasional, like will keep popping up. So there does appear to be some recognition that this wasn't good and that it will try to be amended. But I still come back to the question of why is this even still happening? And ultimately, I am at a point where the answer I come back to is one of two things. And they're both cynical answers. Callousness and arrogance. The callous version is you have not bothered to figure out what tropes are around the kinds of characters and groups and people you are choosing to represent, and therefore you just stumble into crap that anyone who took 5 seconds to look up the tropes that surround queer characters would realize, oh, okay, so I shouldn't do that. That's option one. I find that unlikely in the case of something like Discovery, given the inclusive characters it's already had. There's been talk that they have had consultants from GLAAD at various points and elements. It's unclear how that relationship was working with this particular episode, but they seem to have been aware that they need to watch out for something. So that leaves me with arrogance. What do I mean by arrogance? Well, the way that we end up with this continuing to happen is writers going, okay, so I understand that this is a trope that can bother some people, but I've got a story that really justifies it. Or I've got a take that's really something different. I've got a way to do it that is worth engaging in the trope. And I'm not going to say it's impossible for you to pull that off, but the arrogance of that and how often, especially frequently, the answer seems to be, no, you couldn't. You thought you could, but you couldn't. At this point, I just want to say stop. Stop altogether. Because for every one time somebody engages in a bury your queers trope that it works, quote unquote, or isn't awful, which arguably this isn't the worst example, but for everyone that is okay, I guess, there are 10 others from 10 other writers who also thought that they could pull it off and screwed it up and did something horrible and hurtful and harmful. It's not okay that we keep going to theaters when we were allowed to go to theaters, or sitting down in front of our televisions and seeing people like us that we connect to who immediately die. That is damaging on a long enough time scale. When every single time a queer character shows up, I get a knot in my stomach thinking, oh my God, are they gonna die? And you know what? About half the time, they fucking do. Just stop. And before somebody starts to twist my words around for their bullshit hot takedown of what it is I'm saying, I'm not saying trans or queer characters should be immortal and should never ever die. I am saying that if you are going to have a character die within the same episode they're introduced, don't do it with a queer character. We die too much already. If you want to take a character that you have put time in, investment in, given the audience a chance to truly, properly bond with, and you then later decide, I think there is something that we can bring about by killing this character, I will listen. I'm not going to give you a pass. I'll see what you do, but I will listen. Because if you keep us around instead of killing us immediately, that means that you are putting thought into us. You are taking the chance of continuing to represent us before you just knock us off. Put in the time. Earn it if you're going to do it. And if you're not going to put in the time, just stop. I can't take this anymore. And so help me God, the next time Doctor Who pulls this, I'm going to lose my shit. Because make no mistake, I know I brought this up because of Star Trek. Lots of shows do this. Doctor Who has a horrible history of this. That last holiday special, Resolution, there was a fodder character. That is literally all he was. He was fodder. He was there just to get killed to establish how this Dalek is killing things. And he has 2 lines, one of which establishes that he's gay. There was no reason for that. He was going to die no matter what, but let's make him gay. Let's make this the representation of an entire community, a spectrum of queer people. Hey, here's what dead. I can't take it anymore. Maybe I'm just old. Maybe I've just been seeing this for too long. Maybe the world has just made me even more of a bitter bastard than I already was. And I'm allowed to say bastard because I actually am one. But that kind of brings me back to the point I made earlier. When we keep seeing this over and over and over and over again, it hurts every single time. And it is possible that gray may be utilized in the future of the show in a way that people will look back and think, well, it was justified, or it wasn't so bad. The first trans character in a series that has been around since the 60s. And in the same episode that they are introduced, they are dead. F*** you. I don't have a sponsor on this video. But if you want to support what I do, I have a Patreon. Any amount helps. It is, in fact, how I make my living. It's what pays my bills. Also, if you're not able to do that, but you want to help anyways, you can like, you can subscribe, you can share this video. And as always, I welcome your comments, even if you disagree with me. Just do it politely, and I'll be happy to read it. Drop your comments down below, and let's talk about it. You also don't have to do any of that. Ultimately, as much as I railed and talked about the trans community and the LGBTQ and queer spectrum, this is my perspective. And I am angrier than either, or at least so far as I could tell in the conversations I had, than either of the trans women I spoke with. I may be taking this harder, and maybe that makes me the quintessential angry queer. That's just where I'm at. If you're still here and still watching at almost the end of the video, the thing I need you to remember is that no matter how much I yell and I scream, and even if what I said upset you, which was not my intent to upset anybody, but I need you to remember this. You are beautiful. You are valid. You are loved. You are the council. I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.